All right, welcome to the September 9th Arborist call. The agenda is very similar to every Arborist call, just a brief welcome and meeting intro. Then we do research and implementation status updates from the 2 node implementations, ZebraD, Zcash, to the extent there's something to discuss. And then we have general discussion time. Today, what we've done kind of as a default for the last several months of Arborist calls is just provide an NU5 status, and then we have usually a good bit of time just for open discussions that anyone might want to bring up a topic. Obviously, if you want to, discuss something and want to get it on the agenda ahead of time, you can always let me know. But then we just kind of wrap up. We encourage questions and comments honestly throughout, so you don't have to hold those till the end if anyone has any at all. Arborist calls are focused on protocol development. So it's where contributors get together to talk about upline timelines, processes, what's in R&D, state of development, state of audits, new features, any blockers that might come up. The purpose is to make it more accessible and to provide more transparency around the state of the protocol and where we're at and what we're thinking. And who can participate? Anyone can. Anyone interested can join the calls. Welcome to ask questions, provide input. If there's something you want to present or a topic you would like covered, even if you don't want to present it, you can just let me know, Stephen@electriccoin.co, and we'll get it slotted in. We're meeting every 2 weeks, so we have a lot of flexibility in the schedule now. So, research and implementation updates from ZebraD. Anything, Deirdre, you'd like to discuss, or anyone this week?
Sure, real quick, an update on, oh, I can't share a screen. See if I could share a screen real quick.
Go ahead. Yep.
Great. Over here. This is just a summary of everything we've merged in the last 2 weeks. It's almost all mempool related. First sprint was putting together a lot of the components that we'll need for our mempool implementation. And this past 2 weeks has been a lot of tying them together. We just merged in support to verify push transactions from our network peers, and they get wired into our downloader so that if you tell us about a transaction and you're pushing the full transaction, not just a transaction ID, we skip to the queue to actually push it through our semantic transaction verifier. And if it verifies, it gets pushed into our mempool. A lot of little things like pieces like that, correctly responding to requests for transactions by ID from our mempool with verified contents from our mempool, specifically responding to requests for mempool transaction IDs with mempool transaction IDs, and some changes to how we detect that we are close to the tip of the main net, of the main fork of the mainnet chain, because we are specifically figuring that's how we're turning on all of our mempool support, is when we're about, I think we said within 20 blocks of mainnet tip, because that's how we download chunks of the chain. We're syncing and we're ferrying out requests for 20 blocks at a time, thereabouts. So basically, if we are within 20 and our responses have slowed down, we have a good reason to think that we're close to the tip and we can turn on our mempool. We finally have let up on our freeze for dependency updates. We froze any unnecessary or basically non-security updates to any of our dependencies for a while, because we thought NU5 was going to happen any day now, and we wanted to kind of freeze any unneeded changes so that we wouldn't break anything on ourselves unnecessarily. But that we've kind of eased up on that break a little bit. So we've started merging in a lot of these little dependency bumps that we've been holding off on for a while. We're probably going to schedule not a big push, but a push to upgrade to the next major version of Tokyo, probably towards the end of the year. We have a couple of sprints that we're filling up with work to both improve documentation before NU5 activates on mainnet, but also kind of stuff like this that we've kind of been putting off. We're still on the 0.3 series of Tokyo, and Tokyo creates But we have to kind of move all that sort of stuff together to the breaking changes to go to 1.0 over Tokyo. A question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So 1.0 sounds good,
Uh-huh.
but are there any like outward facing benefits to that upgrade that are of interest?
I'm trying to think of anyone in particular for Tokyo. I think it's mostly better ergonomics for developers. There are changes. Some of our dependencies assume 1.0 Tokyo. Some of them have updates that we want and that we need 1.0 Tokyo for. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can get back to you on that, but it's basically like, okay, we're getting left behind. We need to start updating all these things.
And does 1.0 with like the standard versioning conventions sort of imply commitment to backwards compatibility and longevity?
Yes, as far as I know, with the Tokyo team, the 0. whatever series, if you go from 0.3 to 0.4, there may be breaking changes, but going from 0 to 1. whatever, that's the sort of like we've settled a lot of stuff for Tokyo. And then updates from 1.1 to 1.2 are non-backwards compatible breaking. They should still work. So yeah, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, that's pretty standard for the way Rust Simver is defined.
Yeah, and that is most of what we've done in the past 2 weeks for Zebra. So I'll stop sharing. At least for Zebra specifically. Zebra team has also, we've been collaborating in the Zips meeting for some of this Poseidon sponge specification. So very happy to bring on some of our newer cryptographically aligned engineers, Conrado and Merrick, to help put more eyes on specifying hash functions like Poseidon and other stuff related to Zips. So that's it, I think.
There's a question from Walter saying, when and how would you like outside developers in the community to help with testing?
So after we have our mempool done, which will be in a few weeks, we definitely want, I think we're going to be moving towards a fully validating node like polish phase, where we've basically got everything working for the fully validating node functionality, including mempool. And we want to start, we had some user studies, I think early this year, that gave us some good feedback, and we'll probably do a little bit more of that, and then try to actionize it and actually do something with it. As we move into implementing Zebra clients, we will definitely be asking people to test out a new binary and what they think of a separate binary that is like a sidecar to a full Zebra node, and how their interactions are with that as we start working on it. So ballpark, late end of this year, early next year, we're going to be reaching out to more users to be like, okay, try our software, tell us how your experience is.
Oh, cool. And then Walter suggested, would it be possible to just kind of put a thread on the forum, and that way, when you just like open requests for testers or whatever, I have no idea.
Oh yeah,
but just somewhere they could check. Yeah,
we'll be reaching out.
No shortage of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Thanks, Walter.
All right. Okay, let me get my screen back up. And we'll go into the updates for Zcash D, which are basically NU5 related. So we'll just kind of move into that. So NU5, this is kind of the list that we always throw up. The only update is zip 401. That's something Taylor pointed out on the last Arborist call. So I always just put it in bold so that anyone who happens to watch these sequentially realize this is net new. But that's what we talked about last Arborist call. So that's in there. Our audit schedule, I could actually change the title from remaining to done and take it off. We don't have the final report yet, so I wouldn't call it done. We had to read out with QED-it this morning. So we kind of have their draft report. They're still working on, the final one as is NCC to publish. We don't typically comment on particular findings of an audit until it's published, but it was we were very pleased with the thoroughness at which both QED-it and NCC had gone through the code, QED-it in particular with the circuit. So very impressed with that thoroughness. They had some good ideas and suggestions and things to tighten up in the spec to make more clear or align the code up with the spec, those kind of things a little bit. But overall, we were incredibly pleased with the report that we got back. So that's it. We'll get the final reports, get those published. The impact, and you may or may not have seen, it was a blog post we put out about kind of an updated timeline. Where we kind of found ourselves, we like to have at least 3 months for testnet period or testnet deployment, whatever you want to call it. We have in the past historically done shorter testnets, but they typically involve network upgrades that were not quite as complex as NU5 will be. So the last thing we kind of wanted to do was shorten the testnet cycle. When we had kind of the elongated implementation audit period, we realized that to take the findings from that, incorporate anything that might come out of it into a testnet release, activate on testnet, we would be running, if we tried to do it before the holidays, we would have only had about a 2-month, 1-week testnet period actually, and that was just way too short, given number one, the scope of changes, but then number two, also reaching out to ecosystem partners, because a lot of people kind of start the second half of December for a lot of companies is a lot of vacation and holiday time in there. So we didn't want to put any kind of burden on our partners during that window to have to kind of make sure they were upgraded or be watching an upgrade. And we also didn't want to do any kind of activation during the holidays either. So we elected to kind of target mid-January for that. That gives us roughly, so when we can get active on testnet toward the end of September, that would be a 3.5-month window. Again, you can count out a couple of weeks in there for holidays, but that's essentially kind of what we're looking at in terms of overall schedule as best we see it at the moment. So I'll pause there. There's one question in chat or one comment in chat. Okay, yeah. So any questions, comments, anything we can clear up on the schedule or the audit to the extent we can, again, until it's published, but very pleased overall, I'd say.
Very exciting to hear about the QED-it report. Glad you have it in hand, ETA, when we can look at it. I want to look at it.
Yeah, they're supposed to, this was a draft. Yeah, I mean, pretty polished, but there was a few spots they've got to go back and clean up. They're hoping to have, and we found after the readout, we found a couple little typos we sent them, but they're hoping, I believe, to have the final draft this weekend at some point.
Awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, and I'm already coordinating with NCC for publication of their audit report. They wrapped up their implementation audit. Awesome. And of course specification audit, sometime back.
But yeah, if you could share the QED-it audit with us.
Yeah, be glad to share both of them. Yeah, they did a really good job. So both companies did excellent work.
Awesome.
Yep. I think it's okay to say that the as far as like the impact of the findings that they've given us on the testnet release that we're planning, because that was clearly like we were waiting to make sure that like if they came up with anything that was going to be a big problem, we wanted to make sure we had time to do it. And we've been through everything, and I think there's only we're happy at this point to go ahead with an RC release candidate for the next Zcash release. And then there's a couple of points that I think we're going to be checking in that window afterwards to just make sure that that we're happy with that they make sense, that we're happy with a couple of things. There was one thing I think they were going to double check on. And then assuming that all goes well, then yeah, we should be good next week for the orders come out and testnet release cut.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So yeah, to echo Strad's point, like this schedule I put out last week before we got the audit report, and it's the same schedule. So we didn't
No change.
Yeah, exactly. So so yeah, we're pretty pleased with that.
As far as the other bits that need to go in, so yeah, I've got my PR up for ZIP239 support and Zcash D, which was the last remaining piece that other than the audit pieces that need to go in. So that will be reviewed and merged this week, and then yeah, cut the RC this week, ready for testing and things, preparing for release next week sometime.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions about NU5 or anything at all? Schedule, comments, thoughts?
Any updates on the security proof of, I think, Orchard, the protocol, either the updates that Dara mentioned or the thing that I think Mary Maller was working on?
Let's see, I don't think Dara or Sean joined us yet. They may not be able to make it.
Okay.
So Dara started working on an Orchard security proof. That wasn't one that we targeted. I don't think we had one for sapling.
Yeah, there was an informal one that was done later.
Yes.
And so we've had some discussions around that, and that's I think part of what the basis is for what Dara's working on.
Right.
But yeah, that's like we'll make progress as we can on that going forward. But the main thing that we want before our mainnet release is cut is the Halo 2 security proof, and yeah, Sean's continuing on that.
Yeah,
he's not here to give an update, but
right. Yeah, we've had 2 rounds with Mary, and Sean's just trying to finalize the last bit of that. Interleaving that work with reviewing PRs, so we can get the support merged in that we need for the testnet release. So, but yeah, the last step there is for him to finalize that, and then Mary to make one last pass over it. So that would wrap that part up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions at all about NU5? All right. Well, we have got a good bit of time for, I'll just stop sharing. Any topics anyone wanted to bring up or discuss at all? So I didn't have any like suggested topics in the Discord, and I checked about 20 minutes ago. So I think Deirdre, your hand was up first. So
yeah, I noticed Nate was asking on the Discord, one of the Discords, because we have several now, if community wants to move away from proof of work. Are we settled? We're not settled, but there was a channel that said proof of stake or something like that. How much are we really certain about proof of stake versus we are at least certain we want to move away from proof of work? And like, I think maybe Nathan can say a little bit about that.
okay.
Yeah. So from my perspective, both questions are totally unsettled. And so at ECC, we're trying to switch up how we do things. And one thought is we want to interact with the community a lot more before making any kind of roadmap. So one approach we're taking to that is trying to listen for ideas that seem like some people support, and then sort of researching, like with a product focus, how what this would look like, which users would it impact, which ecosystem partners have we talked to, and what do they think, or what would their requirements be? And then the outcome of that process would be writing like a recommendation to the community, and then having a discussion all before kind of settling on a roadmap. So and then as far as like Zcash R&D channels, I'm a big fan of anyone makes a channel for any topic they're interested in discussing, and that's just sort of to get ideas flowing. So that's kind of the state we see there. So, but that being said, ECC posted a blog post about how we were motivated by proof of stake. And so that conversation is like ongoing. Does that provide a clear answer? I mean, the answer is there's no roadmap and no timeline, and it's a matter of further like research and discussion.
Yeah. Cool.
But it does segue into another area where I see a need for like the Arborist group, where I want to be able to somehow document and collaborate on things that are like around the protocol spec. I don't know if they're zips, but they're things like target use cases or user stories, or like known trade-offs in the design space. So like the current spec makes a set of trade-offs, but what context is that in? And I haven't quite found a good home for that kind of collaboration yet. So I had a pull request open. I haven't checked to see if there's been replies, but since the last Arborist call, where I was trying to document some of the trade-offs around deprecating older pools that we were discussing a couple iterations ago. And I just wanted to write down kind of a textual summary of that conversation to have like a community reference that we could, I don't know, post GitHub issues on or pull requests against or whatever. So any thoughts on how we can collaborate on like that layer? It's sort of above, I think of it as above the actual spec or specific like feature proposals, and more like who are the target users, what are the trade-offs, and also does the community agree or disagree on making certain trade-offs certain ways? It's like a tricky question. I see some hands, so maybe I don't know if they're about this.
Dodger, your hand was up next, I think.
I'm just going to share the results of the poll that the ZCAP poll that we did recently. Hopefully everybody can see that. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about the structure of the poll, and we should have done different formats and asked different questions and so on. But ultimately, we chose to ask the ZCAP's opinion about these two questions. What do you believe should be the first short-term priority for Zcash following the activation of NU5? And then second, what should be the second longer-term thing? And we didn't commit to any specific action based on the outcome of this. It was purely an opinion poll just to see what the community said. And anybody who worked with the ECC know that I'm a huge fan of involving the community or employees or a team or whoever is going to be involved in the outcome of a decision in the process of making that decision. And this is kind of, I guess, our first little step towards that. And what we kind of, or certainly what I kind of look at this and what jumps out at me is that, first of all, there's a large portion of people who are in favor of adding support for user-defined assets, or whatever ZK assets or ZSAs, whatever nomenclature you want to use. There's also a significant bunch who are in favor of moving away from proof of work. and they're smaller. So both those options received significantly more votes than improving scalability or adding programmability. Then in the longer term, programmability gets the large set of votes, and there's still a lot of interest in moving away from proof of work. So what we've been discussing doing, we've been looking at these results and knocking them around internally, and what we're thinking about doing is first of all, spinning up a sort of a working group to look at what's the best way for UDAs to get added to Zcash, and I think that needs to be a cross ecosystem group with people from outside the ecosystem who've had experience of doing this sort of stuff previously. And I guess, if I were to use a starting point, it would be that panel that we had at ZCon too, along with people within the community who have the technical expertise to say, well, what's possible, what's reasonable, how much effort, these sort of things are involved. So that's step number one. And then step number two for in relation to proof of work, I'm thinking that what we may want to do is commission some research or analysis, and I think I gave this as an example in a forum post as to what we might do. Commission some research or analysis from suitably qualified or experienced or knowledgeable people about what the viable alternatives are to pure proof of work, without any prejudgment about where we want to go. So including hybrid proof of work and proof of stake and all the rest. What are the viable workable alternatives? And then what are the implications? What are the trade-offs? So actually, kind of relating to what Nate said, if you make different choices, you've got different trade-offs. And then just getting some analysis of that, breaking down the options. Back when I first joined DCC, one of my first tasks was co-authoring a report on the different methods of bringing privacy to blockchains, which basically involved me asking Dara, Sean, and Strad lots and lots of questions, and then writing down the answers and putting my name on top of it. But I see this as a similar thing. We want to get some smart people to say, look, these are the options that are out there that are feasible, that are workable, that are practicable, and then these are the trade-offs as they apply to Zcash. But beyond that, I think this is just step one. This is not like as I said to Zuko, this is not a binding thing. We're not seeking to mandate that anybody follows, changes their plans as a result of this. But I think that just asking the community questions, and even if those questions are imperfect, again, anybody who's worked with me know that I'm in favor of progress as opposed to striving for absolute perfection. So I just wanted to share that. And at some point when I get around to it, we'll write a blog post. We've got a new head of communications now, which
nice.
should make it easier for getting blog posts out.
That's good.
We're also soon going to announce a new ecosystem relations manager who will be starting in 3.5 weeks time at the beginning of October. So yeah, exciting times at the foundation.
Nice.
So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Okay. All right. Strad, your hand was up next.
I think my hand was for a different suggested topic to talk about, but now that we've gone in this direction, we may as well talk here. I think the interesting takeaway I have from the, well, at least my view on the slides that Dodge was just showing, I think it reflects what I'm feeling as well about the preference for UDAs as being the overall sort of first driver, and also I think the lack of focus, preference for scalability is reasonable in terms of founding, in that we've done a lot of the groundwork to enable it within U5, so it's less of a lift, I think, comparatively to the other ones. In terms of if we suddenly had to get something out there, we have candidate designs already that we could potentially roll out if we ended up in a situation where we suddenly needed scalability. So I think it's reasonable to take the other ones as you. I'm not actually sure if there are like if you look at proof of work and then proof of stake, I don't actually think there's much else that outside of those two categories that is used in any meaningful way. But I would be interested to see what in particular the distinctions of different kinds of proof of stake, which I think is more what's available now, that the different ways at which consensus is formed. I'd definitely be interested in seeing results on that. There's something else I wanted to say in regards to what Deirdre was saying, but I can't remember now, so I'll put my hand up if I remember.
Okay. Nate, I believe you were next, and then I had a couple comments.
Oh, yeah. So Deirdre asked about proof of stake or moving away from proof of work, and I talked about that. And we also posted 2 blog posts relatively recently, and one was sort of like, we're motivated by proof of stake, here's why. And the other one was like, how would we get there, which I was responsible for. And if you looked at it, it's fairly hand wavy. It's like, oh, well, we need a design first and a roadmap, but it, one likely path towards doing that would be to switch to a hybrid mode and then switch to a proof of stake mode. Meanwhile, we have been putting a lot more effort into understanding ZSAs. So that kind of matches the ZCAP first question poll results. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not like we've turned our attention to proof of stake. It's more of us wondering, should we be headed there in the longer term?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I had a few things. One, I think the same thing Strat said, basically about scalability, that we kind of within U5, we kind of view scalability like there's some pretty good high level designs on how we could implement some scalability options pretty quick if we needed to, but scalability kind of becomes, rather than a focus like let's get Halo in place, to a cross-cutting concern that we could potentially incrementally improve scalability even while doing other things in a network upgrade, for example, because some of the additional work on scalability wouldn't be, that heavy of a lift, especially again compared to getting the Halo proof system in place. So we could leverage recursion. On the ZSA front, to echo what Nate was saying, we've continued to, the core team has been obviously focused on NU5, exclusively for the most part. But on the ZSA front, we've been doing a few things. We're working with George Mason, and we've come up with some mechanisms designs. We're vetting those, getting feedback on it. And by the way, the economic study from like George Mason or anyone else doesn't come out with a, like, here's your best bets, 1, 2, and 3. It's like, okay, here's some considerations for this mechanism design. Here's some for that mechanism design. So it kind of gives you like economic feedback on what you're thinking, but pretty good. And then we're also talking to, we've had some discussions with, just generically call them issuers, like people like Wren and Wrapped, just to see, okay, what would be your requirements for issuance and redemption? Because as we look at like the ZSA stack, it's like, okay, circuit changes to support additional assets, issuance and redemption, consensus touch points, most likely done through TZEs. And what are the requirements for those touch points, like key management or whatever the case might be. And then on top of that, of course, is whatever vendor tooling anyone wants to provide to make their offering attractive to people and how they do that. So that was kind of the comment on ZSAs. And then one question that it was the wording in the poll, would you support a move away from POW? Was that just to keep the doors open for things other than proof of stake? Was there anything specific in mind, or was it just to be more open-ended?
So the discussion that we had inside the foundation was very much about the problems and downsides and opposition to proof of work because of its environmental impact, as opposed to we want to move to so it was highlighting the problem rather than, either this is the solution to that problem or this is what we want to do, and then post rationalizing it. So so yeah, it was just purely, is there, because there are people within the foundation who are of the view that proof of stake is not as secure as proof of work, or that the proof of work is the most secure currently practical consensus mechanism. So it was more about, it was about I guess the nature of the question was about, do we dislike proof of work rather than do we really like something else like proof of stake.
Okay, got it.
But by the way, Strat, I think, asked what happens when you add the numbers from 2 and 3 together, which is totally unscientific, but in case you're curious, this is what it looks like. 1/3 for UDAs, 25% for add programmability, and just under 1/3 for big wave.
Yeah, my reason for asking that was just that, like, given the way the questions were structured, you couldn't express a preference for more than 2 options. So what did it look like if we treated that as a score of like which options out of the 4 you preferred? So, okay,
it'd be really interesting to rerun this using some sort of rank, some sort of single transferable vote or something like that. We were just constrained by what Helios could offer us, and I just wanted to keep it simple as well.
Yeah, I was very tempted to go and hack on some Python code when I learned that Helios has just implemented a Python. I'm just like, I really have to not do so, but
we need to not get nerd sniped.
Exactly. So Strad, your hand went back up. Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was it? Yeah, just on pathing forward for like making progress on ZSAs. So yeah, Dodger was talking about having a working group. Stephen and Nate talked about what ECC is doing there. Yeah, I think in terms of like, in terms of community involvement in that, for others listening right now, the most useful thing for me as a developer and protocol designer would be just any additional use cases that anyone is aware of. Either like concrete, you're seeing it done elsewhere, or hypothetical, here's something cool I would like to do with this. Because the more of those that we have in our scope and in purview, like when we're looking at this, the less likely we are to accidentally prevent them from being possible. We may decide to intentionally prevent some from being possible due to details of the protocol design, or details about what we're willing to support ongoing within Zcash. But I do want to try and capture as much of that as possible, given that this is functionality that's quite a departure from what Zcash has done thus far. In terms of what it supports, and it will entail some level of ongoing complexity and maintenance burden to the full node developers and library operators. So if there's aspects that that would be balanced by like, okay, well it serves this subset of use cases, but it costs this kind of thing. Like I want to be able to make sure that we're not that those balances are informed by the full set of use cases, because like I just sit in my room and write software. I don't participate in DeFi. I don't participate in a lot of the other like stuff going on in like weird and wonderful edge cases in the ecosystem. So people who are and have experience with that, please come and let us know.
All right, Nate, your hand.
Yeah, that was a great segue to my hand. Yes, totally double down on that. Helping gather requirements and use cases would be super helpful. But my hand was actually about concern about confusion in the community about what UDAs or ZSAs could mean. So one kind of confusion I'm anxious about is when people compare them to ERC20s, because a lot of those use cases require a lot of programmability features, and which are unlikely for the first version of our multi-asset support. So the sooner we can kind of document what kinds of use cases we're aiming for and start sharing that with the community, I think it could really help tamper some of that hype.
Yeah, I agree. Which is, yeah, not just even hype, but like, yeah, understanding the space of what's available and possible. I think it's still useful to know of other use cases that people have and are potentially excited about for future Zcash upgrades. If not least because, like, yeah, then we have more stuff we can write zips about. But
Right.
but yeah, having yeah, this also gets back, I think, to your earlier point, Nathan, about having a nice place where people can sort of collaborate on figuring this out in sort of like a semi-permanent way. Because like the Discord and the forums are nice for like just general discussion, but they're not really useful as a sort of documenting ongoing gathering of consensus and development of ideas. I guess my fallback on that would be maybe a combination of, you know, I don't think Zips is quite the right place for necessarily doing that directly, but I'll do some thinking about what might make sense there. Like, I've actually been kind of keen to like play around with GitHub's discussions UI for this kind of thing, as sort of like an interacting with, like, say, having a repo that's focused on this kind of like living sort of like a community a community driven Wikipedia of design ideas, and then sort of collaborate, combining that aspect for like, trying to come up with something we can then go try and produce documents that then become the basis on which we then create the zips, or like the rationales and things that might lead to it potentially. It does require like interacting with GitHub, which is a barrier to some people that people have expressed as a problem with the zips process before. But I'm kind of hopeful that the discussions UI might be sufficient to provide that kind of forum-y style discussion aspect that people want.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily requiring the code style PR updates and things, while still keeping it in one place and enabling us to sort of like corral the discussion and keep track of everything. Yeah.
GitHub discussions are like a hot skip and a jump away from the forums. So, like, yeah, exactly.
Nate?
Yeah, Strad, you mentioned zips, and I have this notion that it would be really good. So I kind of see supported use cases and also known use cases that we don't support as as kind of similar to the protocol specification, where it's like the two should go together in one revision of this bigger thing. So then zips, if we had that resource, then zips could have a section which is, this impacts these known use cases, this introduces this new use case, and this potentially prevents this currently supported use case and causes it to become retired. And I think that would improve how we think about zips, right? Because some zips have much less impact on use cases than others. And it would be interesting and important to be thinking about that as we're reviewing zips.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of looking in. I'll have a chat with Dara and Deirdre and other zip editor people offline and see if we can, like, because yeah, one option there is just enable GitHub discussions on the zips repo and then see if we can do things within there. I think if we wanted to, because you still need a place to be able to like look at what's the thing that's enveloping, and zips.z.cache as currently set up is not quite prepared for that. I don't know if maybe setting up a parallel like MDBook style thing or a separate GitHub page or something within the repo might make sense.
My pull request introduces an MDBook and I was totally unsure. Like, this seems really messy, but let's try it and see what people think.
Yeah, we like the things you need here is like a place for people to chat about the thing they want to talk about, a way for them to reference parts of the thing they want to talk about, and ideally then a place they can read the thing that they're trying to talk about nicely. And just reading in markdown pages within the GitHub UI is not great, but having it close enough that, which is why I'm liking to me the idea of like an MD book, because Markdown's easy for people to understand and get to. Like technical documents, yeah, we can make them a bit more technical like we do for zips now, but I kind of like the idea of like just straight Markdown is easy for people to comprehend and easy for people to talk about and opine on, because it's just text, but easy to render. So we'll bring that up in next Zips discussion meeting, I guess, and see what we can do on the back end side to sort of technically support this.
Nathan, did you, was it you or Andrew Miller, I think, there was a site for this that was designed to discuss things?
Kialo is what you're thinking of. Is the like propose a binary decision and then create graphs or like decision trees that are like self-referential. In fact, I think it becomes a little bit descendant of the Ouroboros Hydra, maybe.
Right. So yeah, every few months I try using it. It hasn't really stuck yet. But I mean, the one thing so it seems like it's designed for deliberating between different options as a group, which is nice, but I just want the first step, which is just like mapping out the options in the first place, because sometimes I get kind of lost.
Yeah. Kiala's good for debates, whereas what we're after here is collaborative pathfinding.
Yeah.
The first top discussion on Kiala right now is, should humans be vegan? No,
should is very loaded there.
I've just carried out a denial of service on Zuko for the next month.
Yeah, you did. That's a good point. Oh wow, Zuko dropped off, so we can hack on him now. So that's cool. Yep, that would be that would keep him occupied for a bit. All right. Any other questions, comments, or anything anyone wants to discuss? Bring up.
If we're done with that topic, I was going to bring up something else. So
there's a request to archive the chat log, and this comes up every time I use a Zoom meeting. So and I always forget how it works. So does anybody know? I always do like cut and paste manually, but sometimes I forget.
Right down the bottom.
There's a button that says save chat.
Yeah, there's 3 little dots.
Yeah.
Very bottom of the page.
Down at the bottom right. And then you can click save chat. And then you click
bottom of the, yeah.
Walter's comment appears to indicate that you can only do that for save chat. It's not clear if that's maybe attendees can't do it and only panelists can.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not right clicking in the type message thing, to be clear. It's not right clicking in type message. It's clicking on the more button next to the emojis box. So that's at least what I see in whatever Zoom version I'm currently running.
Yeah, Nate, your client is the web app just fired from a Chrome extension, and it is different, and it is
I
neglected.
never have.
It was my primary Zoom client for a long time, until people were like, why don't you use such and such a feature? I'm like, well, they don't have it in the web app, so I have to download this bundle of C and C++ and hope and pray it does not, have another exploit pushed to my computer. Thanks very much.
I live life on the edge instead of the Chrome.
I just realized Zoom will not let me share my Zoom window. Because I was going to share my view.
Yeah, I was going to show the window so you could see
it.
Yeah.
I could do the whole desktop, but
prevents infinite mirrors.
Yes.
Yeah, go Strad.
Yeah, so if we're done with the previous
Yeah.
topic, I wanted to just sort of bring up there's a request, so proposal for a grant for ZMG to do with GPU acceleration on mobile, and I just wanted to sort of I've made some comments in the thread there, but just to bring it to the
Fantastic.
wider devs. So the current situation with GPU in general is that, we wrote Bellman for Sapling, we did that. And then basically the only people who actually do GPU stuff with it are Filecoin, because they have many, many proofs to make with a very large circuit. And so you really need it. Whereas for Sapling, it's like, well, we've down to a couple of seconds. That's fine. Yeah. It's not worth the hassle of trying to integrate it with, a bunch of different platforms. But it is true that on mobile, there could be some benefit here. So I've been doing some digging, and sort of related to this, I've been collaborating with some of the Filecoin devs for a while on just enabling them to migrate back from their custom forks of our libraries to our stack, and sort of bringing in functionality they require for that. And so my goal, at least personally, is to try and enable Zcash to, our Zcash stacks to leverage GPU support, by the end of the year, because I don't think it's that far away. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the GPU side already. So it's mostly just about getting the hooks into our crates like Bellman and BLS1231 and so on, to enable that. So that's ongoing, and I'm just keeping track of that with the Filecoin devs. So as far as it goes to mobile, as far as I can tell, that seems like the best option for adding integrations if we're going the OpenCL route, because they already have code to generate OpenCL, and it sounds like they're doing CUDA soon for NVIDIA integration better. So that's the route I would say if people are looking at doing. I think that's provides us the best bang for our buck, because we get to leverage code that they are already invested in maintaining. But then we can leverage that on desktops, which doesn't really matter, I think, for most of our use cases. But we get to use the infrastructure around it that they're maintaining to gain access for mobile on us, assuming that that mobile GPUs can be accessed in this way. But they seem to think it can be done.
So Steve, thank you for digging into this, because this is slightly beyond my knowledge. So I'm asking some questions on this. So for OpenCL, it's basically generating a targeted C-like.
Yeah, a kernel piece that sort of handles the FFT or the multi-exp or whatever.
Yeah.
So what it sounds like it would be is there are two parts to the GPU logic. There's the kernel that is given to the GPU to do the piece.
Yeah.
And then there is the so then on top of that, you then need something that actually manages it all. So you have the thing that does the GPU scheduling and integration.
Yep.
And at the moment for them, so their fork of Bellman is called Bell Person, because because that's how they named all their forks. And right now they do that just entirely within Bellman as being the arbiter of this. And so there's obviously some trait work to make it work, but effectively their view, at least, is that it doesn't really make sense for anything other than the thing trying to do the computation to be GPU aware. It's not something we can just enable as a back end of the curve library, because you really need to have enough logic going on that it's worth doing shipping it over to the GPU.
Yeah.
So it's not something that we could just enable as a backend, an AVX2 backend versus U64. It does need buy-in at the top layer. So that's, I think, how we're going to try and sort of direct at least that part of the integration towards, is having bringing in the GPU support from Bell Person into Bellman, to make it the proving system aware of doing proving logic. And then having the stuff that generates the kernels for the specific backends that either ends up in, I think there might end up being some general logic that ends up inside the group crate, or in GPU specific. Yeah, because like there's parts of it, like the multi-exponent FFT stuff, that is general over the curves even. And
Yeah.
so that like we're already looking at bringing in general multi-scalar multiplication logic for CPUs into
Nice.
group. So
Nice.
having like
Yeah.
feature
I
flagged
think I
off
saw that
GPU.
PR. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an issue open where like, so I've discovered they have an implementation of parallelized optimized multiscalar mole. And you know, so it's like there's 3 implementations now. There's the one in Halo 2, and there's the 3rd one around. So we'll figure something out there.
Mhm.
But I think that's the way we're going to try and end up going, is having then the curve crates will be the ones that actually do the like enable the curve specific kernel pieces using the pieces in group or the crate below it. And then Bellman and that will, you know, because they are technically pluggable based on the curve, you'll just be able to say, okay, well, I'm enabling GPU support in Bellman, which requires GPU support in the curve crate, which we provide. And then whoever's using Bellman will then just enable that GPU support and need to do some hooks or whatever to get it working in the environment necessary.
And this would be, so when the top level, like Bellman or Bellperson or whatever, has all of these supporting dependencies and they have all their features enabled and all this sort of stuff, it would generate the OpenCL
at build time.
when at build. Okay.
I think, well, so if I recall correctly, OpenCL can do runtime pieces, but I think the CUDA stuff requires compile time.
Okay.
So Filecoin are currently working, some of the stuff they're doing is working on enabling, like with the build.rs, to be able to generate that as necessary. So there's still some work going on, but like Filecoin are committed to doing work there. And so I'm just talking with them and sort of making sure that like, because they are built on our Crate ecosystem, it makes sense for them to work in with us. And so I want that to also work in with the mobile stuff that we care about doing. And I don't think Filecoin particularly cares about enabling people to store files on phones. Not really their use case, but it would be nice if we can share the underpinnings of all this.
Yeah. OpenCL is not for any, is there any iOS device that currently mints zero knowledge proofs, like Zcash proofs, that we were aware of? Or is it completely generic code for that?
Do you mean iOS specific, or do you mean, so like we have obviously iOS apps that do ZKPs.
Okay, all right, good.
There's the iOS SDK that ECC builds that does proofs.
Are we able to target any of this OpenCL work for iOS devices?
I have no visibility on that. Okay. That's the kind of thing that if someone's applying for a grant, whoever it was, the Z Wallet person, I think, that's the kind of thing that it would be ideal for them to be doing as part of their grant, is figuring out all those pieces.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of providing the context here of, I have an investment, personal desire to reduce the spread of the Crate ecosystem, and as part of that, we'll likely be gaining GPU support for desktops in our stack. And also, as an aside, hopefully after that, the lift to then add GPU support to Halo 2 will be smaller, because we'll just be implementing that scheduling and initialization piece in the Halo 2 crate, like in the Bellman crate. But there will already exist code that we can probably reuse, or so on, and the Halo 2 specific pieces will probably not be that much of a lift compared to the rest of the stack that already exists.
I was just doing a grep on the forum thread, and it's not clear. All the hits of OpenCL iOS or iPhone devices are like, and so it seems like the grant is unsure. I think H. Han is unsure if this would be reusable on iOS. Like things like OpenCL, OpenGL, they tend to be in a Windows Android type of world. They don't tend to be readily supported in an Apple, a Mac, iOS, Apple device sort of world, because they're Apple and they have a lot of not invented here syndrome. So I'm mostly like, it would be really cool to invest in this if we could have some better guarantees that it was generally pretty portable. And by portable, I mean, you can generate it for several targets, the way that we generate for several, backends, and it would work, and you could switch depending on which one you're targeting. But I don't know if that's true for OpenCL. And
I believe that's at least the the crate that that the Filecoin devs are working on now, they claim, obviously I haven't had a chance to look into it at all, that it can generate back-end logic for NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD GPUs, and just like whatever you need, it will just generate. And so in theory, any mobile that supports OpenCL GPU stuff should also be possible to just become a target.
Okay, all right.
But as you say, the the piece for Apple is going to be tricky. But given that they're adding, I think there's another crate that work on Rust GPU utils or something, which they're intending to be a wrapper that goes around the semantics of OpenCL versus CUDA. So that might be a potential target for adding like Apple specific, metal or whatever it is that they call it, their
ARM
engine. Yeah.
Apple,
and also,
Apple M1,
it also occurs to me that like right now, both the BLS-1231 crate and also pasta curves and things, that's all just U64 implementations at the moment. There's still opportunities to do like vectorization support and stuff like that, just to gain performance that way. So like I know
that sort of stuff, I would be much more like, yes, please, we will pay you money to like do this generic, quote unquote, generic vector implementations of this sort of stuff to get us speed up.
I know something that when I was talking with Dignified Choir at Filecoin about just BLS-431 and this migration of traits and things, one of the things that they asked was like, would it make sense for Blasters, BLS-TRS, which is the crate that they use, it's a crate that they wrote, a Rust crate that implements all of our trait libraries. Well, they're migrating to our trait libraries as we speak. But it's backed by the C library BLS-T, which implements a bunch of like just low-level assembly. And I'm going, they asked whether that could be implemented as a backend for the BLS-1231 crate. And I'm going, I guess in theory, but I would much rather that we, take the learnings from that and write nice Rust vectorization for that. So that's the approach that I want to take. And, if people want to contribute to that, great. Otherwise, it's the sort of thing I'll probably be hacking on my own because I like doing curve stuff. It's fun.
I plus to that. Thank you for commenting on that thread.
My main goal there was just, I don't want an entirely parallel stack to appear that then becomes difficult to integrate into our existing stack. Even if like in the iOS case, it makes more sense to build a parallel stack, we should be aware of the fact that it will exist in our stack alongside this GPU support that Filecoin developed for the Bellman style backends.
Okay, any other topics or comments, questions anyone has?
Definitely it sounds like some of this would be, if we did the vectorization route, some of this would be reusable into Halo 2. So definitely would like, if we're going to invest, having it be like, whoa, sapling is like super duper fast if you have a supported GPU on the mobile device, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's nice. But like, if it's completely leaving Halo 2 and Orchard in the dust, that doesn't feel good either. If there's any part that's reusable is preferred.
Well, we've done our best to make the Orchard stack be basically as fast for proving time as sapling. I think I forget exactly where it ended up, but it's very close.
But it gets hard when it's literally like the entry point is Bellman all the way down versus over here the entry point is Orchard and Halo 2 all the way down. So
so that is definitely harder at the GPU level, whereas for the vectorization stuff, it's just we go and make better backends for the crates and we get that brilliantly everywhere.
It would be lovely. Cool.
Okay, well, I think we're done then. Finished up a few minutes early today.
Cool.
All right. Okay, well, we'll catch up async in Discord, and everyone have a good rest of the week, a good weekend.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye,
take
all.
care. Bye.
Bye.
For now.